Marla Miller from marlamiller.com, and I'm going to talk just for a few minutes. I'm going to watch that time so I don't blab on too much, but I'm going to talk a bit about hiring editors. In our new reality, there is a need for indie writers in particular to have their work vetted by editors who can help them tighten it, who can help them clean it up, who perhaps can even help them redirect content so that it is more compelling. Whatever the reason, if you're one of those writers who is thinking about hiring an editor, I think that these are good times to do that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there are lots of unemployed editors out there who used to work for publishing houses who no longer do. There's lots of editors out there from magazines. You're looking at one of them who used to write for magazines and no longer do. There are lots of editors out there. In addition to those editors who have developed an editing business because they can't survive selling their work. In my experience, and it's 20 years deep, my experience with private editors are that they generally are authors who can't, survive on selling their work, and so they develop an editing, launch an editing business on the side, and that pays bills, So, having said that, there are certain terrific editors out there, and I know plenty of them, and I recommend when authors ask me. But I'm very careful about my recommendations. Recently, I had a writer who is, a pretty good writer. He hasn't been a writer his whole life, but he was a very successful professional, and he worked in the publishing business, not as a writer, but in that business. So he's been around and has a novel, and I met him at a conference, and we connected, and I did some of his query letter critiquing for him, and he asked me about editors and could I recommend, and for his project I could not, but I said, throw some names at me, and I'll give you my 2 cents, and he did, and both of those names were people that I said go right ahead and pitch to them, and so he asked for guidance, and here's the guidance that I gave him that I'm passing on to you. If you are hiring an editor, that means that you are ready to write a check anywhere from a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 and more, okay? To have a whole manuscript vetted could cost you easily $3,000 to $5,000. In the old days, it would have cost you $5,000 to $750, but editors' rates have gone down, along with everybody else's. But you're going to pay a chunk of change to an editor to vet your book for you. And so for that investment, here's what I would do, and I didn't do this when I was a youngin' in this business. Well, I wasn't that young. I was still a youngin'. I was naive. I just took people at face value. I'd meet them at a conference. I developed a rapport. I would ask them to edit. They would always say yes, and I'd give them my money. And I wouldn't ask them for recommendations. I would not ask to speak to writers that they edited. I would not ask to look at books that they edited. I would just, they were the editor, I wasn't, and I would trust them with my work. And I have gotten burned doing that, not once, a couple times. That said, I've also had wonderful editors that I have worked with. But because I've gotten burned, I know that other writers get burned, and I have heard horrific stories, and I need to tell you horrific stories about, naive writers who are just so desperate to get their work out there that they will really follow anybody, and have followed people, and have given them lots of money, and still have not had their work published. So, what I suggested to this writer is that he ask these editors for recommendations, referrals, like you would in any other business, and also, if he wanted to, could he see the books that they've edited to see if, in fact, these are good reads, or to show this editor's work, right? We want to, I mean, if we do good work, we're very pleased about showing it off, aren't we? So he did, and one of the editors, I'm assuming, just went right ahead and gave him names, etc., etc., and the other one sent a letter to him, and that's what I want to talk about. Because in this letter, she essentially said to him, um, she actually called him a rookie and said that she doesn't like working with people who are inexperienced because they don't trust her. And boy, I'll tell you, that still ticks me off when I think about it. So I decided to blog about it because that's what I do. If you decide that you're going to plunk down good money to an editor, if they can't deliver names to you and telephone numbers and books that they have worked on, if they can't tell you that oh, of course, talk to my clients, they'd be glad to talk to you, move on, period. Any editor that comes back to any writer, and I don't care what level writing that writer is offering, and has to get has to demean that writer's worth, then that's the red flag that you want to see waving. I don't know why an editor would do that. Now that said, I have worked with many writers, and yes, writers can be very, very, very difficult to work with. I know all about that, but that's just part of the working in this trade. You have great writers that you work with. You have writers that are pains in the butt, and vice versa. Great editors and editors that are pains in the butt. This editor is a pain in the butt, and so I want to pass this along to all of you. If you ever get an editor who says to you, I really don't want to share my referrals, or I don't want you to see the books that I've edited, boy, thank them. Send them a thank you email, because they just saved you a lot of money. Until the next time, be well, keep writing. Let me know what you think about this one. I'd be curious.